Welcome everyone to another episode of Ask Pastor Keith, where today we are with Pastor Keith. And the question we have for you today is, what should somebody do if they're struggling with something like pornography?
Okay. Our answer about pornography, as well as all other addictions, obviously this is a very complicated issue. It's not a simple matter or one silver bullet that's going to solve all the problems. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give that kind of impression. If it's that easy, nobody will be in addictions, right? So it is a difficult thing. But I'm going to approach it as a pastor and a few different levels here. Whatever the problem is, let's say pornography, we got to find the root cause of it. If I may use the word emotional or even spiritual root cause of it, and deal with that first. That does not mean this habit, whatever the routine that is developed will go away. That's not the case. But it will make it easier to deal with it. And then people have to understand we cannot just deal with the symptomatic issues and thinking it's going to go away. So let's go back to pornography. Usually, or generally speaking, pornography is an intimacy issue. And a lot of psychologists are saying sometimes when we are developing as a person, little children to puberty and all that, there are some cases, generally speaking, the intimacy or physical intimacy or the freedom was not demonstrated by the parents, particularly from the father figure. Not there or emotionally not available and whatever else. Especially when we are going through puberty time and when our gender roles and attraction is cemented. And that's a very important time. So this lack of intimacy that we as a human being, defense mechanism and whatever else, we're trying to substitute it with a cheap intimacy. So pornography or sexual addiction, usually masturbation, other things, is a replacement of cheap intimacy. All right. So that area must be dealt with, through counseling, in a healing prayer ministry, and whatever, the thing. As I said, that does not solve all the problems, the habitual things that has formed and all that. Bible says the sexual promiscuity or the sexual sin is a sin that sins against our own body. It's so true. Some of the psychologists and psychiatrists are saying the sexual gratification without the partner, pornography, masturbation, other things, it releases dopamine from our brain and it unbalances our body in a very dangerous way. So we are actually sinning against our body. And it doesn't stop there. It is not only morally and spiritually wrong, but socially wrong too. Usually addiction, not only sexual, but let's say gambling, substance abuse, and all that makes us a liar. We deceive in order to hide our addiction or rationalize or whatever else. So it makes us dishonest from other people, and many times that makes us antisocial. It kind of make us withdraw to our own self. It's very unhealthy dynamic. So as we all know, all the addictions are dangerous in that way. So there is not only dopamine addiction, but there's also adrenaline addiction, where people put themselves in a very dangerous situation, like daredevils or extreme sports that goes against self-preservation that is normal to people. And through it, they experience thrill and constantly overdoing it and over-dependent on this adrenaline and things like that. And that is also dangerous for our well-being generally as a person. So these things cause us to be broken, not only physically, but it has a social and spiritual impact as well. Now, so having dealt with the core issue, now the habitual things is our habit is formed, addiction is formed by something called trigger mechanism in ourselves. We are not always vulnerable to whatever gambling or sexual or substance issue. There is a triggering event that causes us to get into that mode and give us pleasure or gratification that makes us do it again. We need to find this trigger mechanism. What causes us to be vulnerable for this behavior before we engage into it? And that we need to diffuse that as much as possible. And so now we need social accountability. We need somebody, not anybody, somebody is close to you, or preferably brothers or sisters who are in prayer in the same community. This is why small groups are very important. Day in and day out, they know you. They are on your side. They are not gossipers. They can keep it confidential, and yet they're spiritual to pray with you, to go through this with you. So you need a social accountability. Right? And they will help you to diffuse the triggering event, and you have to share that, and they will stay with you with a prayer and whatever is necessary. So this, because your willpower is already compromised in that area, that's why you have addiction. And if you're trying to do it on your own willpower, you will certainly fail. So now you need other people to come into that place and stand with you. And this is so important. So not only deal with the core issue and find out what is making you vulnerable, triggering event, and you want to diffuse that with the help of other brothers or sisters, preferably 2 or 3 at max. Right, and so that you can deal with it, whether this is not only addiction, but people who have a mental issue like kleptomania, the people stealing things from all that, and those kind of types of behavior too, you have to bring it to the light, and to some people, not all of them, some people you can trust and become in an accountable setting. And to do with it. Because as long as these types of behavior, addiction or this type of mental issues stay in the dark, the enemy has all the power, right? You need to bring it out to the light, to the Lord first, and then the like-minded brothers and sisters who are on your team, who really care for you, and you do it together. That's why social dynamic is so important. In addiction, more than any other issues, because your willpower is compromised in this particular area, you need others to step in to help you. And so this dynamic is very important. And you walk together in this way for a given period of time. Then you have a better control and to deal with it. But addiction, by definition, never goes away completely. So you will be vulnerable. So you need to be mindful of the fact that you are vulnerable. So don't find yourself in the situation when where you're compromised. So with the help of brothers or sisters, you get to a certain level of control, and yet you still need to be mindful that you are vulnerable and your willpower will be compromised in that particular area very easily. Now you have better control, but yet you are still vulnerable. So as long as you recognize that, and those things we can overcome, right?
Well, thank you so much for that answer, Pastor Keith. And so join us next time for another episode of Ask Pastor Keith. Thank you very much.